And good morning, Vertical Church. Good morning. My name is Ben, Pastor Ben Griffin, and honored to get to pop in here and share a message with you all in the By Faith series. For those of you who don't know me, I've been around Vertical for a little while. We're regular attenders. I used to, years ago, pastor a church, and now I run a nonprofit focused on raising up local missionaries in cities across the country, bringing the gospel to hard-to-reach and unreached places. And today, as we continue the By Faith series, which, by the way, hasn't this series been amazing? Can we just say, yes, it has been amazing. Can we give a hand? All right, little golf clap. I was in church. It's so funny. If your bracket like survived to this point in March Madness, you'd be like losing your mind. But we're like, hey, what do you think about this message about faith? We're like, let's golf clap for that. That's great. Today, we are continuing the By Faith series, and the series has been, I have just been so moved by it week after week, seeing a perfect and holy God, imperfect people putting their faith in a perfect and holy God, and just the impact of that lived out. And we've gone over the last couple weeks in particular, we've heard about Abraham, and then his son Isaac, and then his son Jacob, and then this week we get to talk about Jacob's son Joseph, by faith Joseph. And just to give you a heads up, it's going to be a long intro before we get to the actual Hebrews passage, but I think you'll understand why as we unpack it and pull it together. So at this point, I think I do a lot of traveling with my work, and I've realized that flight attendants and pastors actually have something very much in common. And that is, if you've ever been on a flight and the flight attendant is up there and they're telling you these like incredibly important life-saving things. Like, hey, underneath your seat is a flotation device. And in case of emergency, oxygen will follow, this thing will fall, and here's what to do with it. But have you noticed that we absolutely ignore the flight attendant at every turn? Right? People are like, oh, I got to check TikTok before I got to go in airplane mode, or we're already sleeping, or you're looking at the snacks, or whatever. Like, they're talking about things that will save our lives, and we're all like, yeah. And I think the reason why is because those life-saving insights don't seem very applicable in that moment, right? We're not thinking we're going to need to put those into action, but and God forbid any of us is on a plane in an emergency moment, but I guarantee we'll all be like, well, where are the emergency exits? What is that? What are those people in the emergency row supposed to do? Like, what do we do with the oxygen? Suddenly that truth becomes incredibly important to us. And I think a lot of us do this with what we hear on Sundays, what we read when we're diving into the Word. We hear life-saving, eternal truth. In fact, it does have impact for our daily life, but many of us are just kind of going through the motions every day and not seeing that truth echoes deeply into our everyday. And so my prayer today is that we would have ears to hear what the Lord is saying to us, that we wouldn't shut it off, but they would hear it. Not wise words from me, but the word of our God through His word to us today. And here's a question I'm going to build off of. Do you believe in God? Do you believe God? So do you believe God, or do you just believe in God? I think for many of us, probably most of us in this room, we go, yeah, I believe in God. God is God. He created everything. Like, I know, I trust God. But do you actually believe God? Because when you believe God, it affects how you act. It affects how you show up. It means that you trust what He says to be true. Not just believe in Him, but do you believe Him? A.W. Tozer said this, great quote. Says, what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. Let me ask you, what do you believe about God? Do you think about God? Like, I've noticed sometimes in my prayers, like I've noticed a pattern where I feel like, man, sometimes I'm just coming to the Lord and like, I need this, I've decided this, fix this, change this. It's just like a list of stuff. Can you imagine in a friendship or just any relationship, coming to your parents and every conversation you have with them is just a list of things. Okay, if you could do this and fix this and change that, okay, talk to you later. And I've just been thinking, Lord, what is that all that I should be? He wants us to bring our needs to him. By God's grace, he opens the throne room of heaven for us to come before him. But is that all that comes into our mind when we think about God, is what we want? Or should there be something more? Because I think so many of us are caught up in our comforts that we miss the greater calling. So in my prayer life recently, I've been like, hey, how do I focus more just on who you are, God? So I'm praying and the sun is rising. I look at the sunrise and I'm like, the sun is a giant ball of energy and fire that we are literally rotating around. Like, God, you made that. And it's so glorious. I can't even look at it for 30 seconds without burning holes in my eyeballs. You made that. You are so much greater. Let me just start by being in awe of who you are. Reading his word, and Lord, what do you have to say to us? So what comes to your mind when you think about God as the most important thing about you? And then that affects how we pray and how we follow him. Psalm 119, 105 says this. Very famous passage, one of the longest chapters in the Bible. Right in the heart of it, it says this: your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Do you believe God to lead even if you can't see the whole path? Did you notice it says a lamp to my feet and a light? Like a lamp in those days, especially, you got an oil lamp with a flame on the end, you're maybe seeing 10 feet in front of you when it's pitch dark. Like a lamp to my feet is not, what I want the Lord to do is give me a floodlight to my path. Anybody else? Like, Lord, just illuminate it all. Instead, he gives a lamp, like, here, just the next few steps. Take these steps, son. Take these steps, daughter. And trust me that I see the whole path. Your word is a lamp to my feet. Like, do you believe God even if you can't see it all? Do you believe him? When my kids are 20s now, but when my oldest was a baby, and some of you have been around babies, what you may not realize with your first is like sometimes they learn and grow in spurts. Like all of a sudden, like you're used to your kid just kind of laying on the floor and not moving, and all of a sudden they're everywhere. And then suddenly one day they just have an extra speed. So my little boy, he's crawling, and we had a cat at the time, and it was like his thing to just chase that cat everywhere. And he was gaining speed on that cat. So we're upstairs in the house. The cat runs down the stairs, and my son starts just full speed crawling towards the stairs to grab the cat. And I see what's about to happen, and I run over there, and I scoop him up, and I grip, and I saved him from some serious pain. And he did not thank me at all. Like he started screaming, crying, because in his mind, in his perception, I was taking away his fun and the thing that he was pursuing. But I saw a bigger picture. I was scooping him to safety, and even though he complained about it, he was in the safest place in my arms. Way too many of us equate God's blessing and presence in our life with the amount of comfort that we have. Have you noticed that? If I'm comfortable, I'm blessed. I'm going to tell you, comfort has become an idol, especially to the American Christian church. And what if God is calling us out of our comfort zone into something better and bigger, but we can't see it all? Do you believe God? Even if you can't see it all, can you believe him? Here's the definition of faith I want to work with this morning. Is this: faith is confidently trusting God to be who he says he is and acting accordingly. Faith is confidently trusting God to be who he says he is and acting accordingly. Man, there is a lot of instances in my life where I say that I'm putting my faith in God, but what I'm actually doing is saying I believe in God, but I'm putting my faith in myself. I'll muscle it, I'll make it happen, I'll control it, and if it's out of my control, then I get really frustrated. Anybody else relate to that? Where we're really not saying by faith in God, we're really saying by faith in me. There was a time a couple years ago where I was a guest preacher at a church in Pittsburgh, and I came into that first service, and sometimes when you're a guest preacher, you just pull something, and you're like, I'm going to preach this today, And I came into that first service, and I preached a message, and I felt like at the end of it, I just felt the conviction of the Holy Spirit set on me. And what the Spirit was convicting me of is that I just preached a message completely on my strength. Like I had it written, I had it formulated, I preached it, and my goal was more to entertain and engage than it was to really speak the word. I didn't have a dependence on the Spirit. And so I retreated because there were 2 services, so I retreated between services, and I prayed, just confessed, Lord, forgive me. Forgive me for not just wholeheartedly depending on you. Forgive me, Lord. Like I just gave all I could on my strength. And I asked him, I said, Lord, for this next service, would you just show me what it is to be wholly dependent on you, that your Spirit would speak. And believe me, speaking by the Spirit doesn't mean you're just running off the cuff. I mean, the Spirit works in our preparation as well. But in that moment, I had prepared and done everything on my own strength, except I had not trusted and put my faith in God. I said, by faith, Ben preached that day, by faith in Ben, instead of by faith in God. So I said, for this next service, by faith in you. So I preached it again, and I would actually say 80% of what I said was probably the same, but there was something different that happened in that message. The Lord moved. I felt at the end like, if I were just judging on how well it was given, how well it entertained, how well I thought people understood what was being said, I would have said I didn't do that great a job. But I was overwhelmed at the end of that message with person after person after person saying, look, this little thing you said was exactly what I was praying about this morning. This little thing you said was exactly what I was wrestling with. This little thing God's been working on me with. Because what happened was I wasn't speaking on my strength, I was speaking on God's strength, and God was already at work doing what God does. How much are we doing by our strength versus His? And when we trust Him, we show up differently, we pray differently, we seek the Lord differently. I love this quote from Tim Keller. It says this: we can be sure our prayers are answered precisely in the way we would want them to be answered if we knew everything God knows. Let me say that again. We can be sure our prayers are answered precisely in the way we would want them to be answered if we knew everything God knows. Isn't that so powerful? Man, we pray so much out of our limited view versus trusting God's unlimited perspective. And I think when we pray this way, I think when we show up this way, I think when we believe God, then what happens is we start living what I would call a questionable life. And what I mean by that is not like a sketchy life, but like questionable in the sense of other people start questioning because you show up different than others. Because there's something about you that they go, why are you reacting different than everyone else I know? Everything the world tells me. Why are you showing up differently? What's different? The questionable life. Here are some examples of friends of mine, or a friend of mine who lived a questionable life. I've got a friend, Sammy Wanyoni. He leads an organization called Merge in the Twin Cities here. And a number of years ago, as a single man, he just started praying to the Lord for a spouse. He said, you know what, I'm going to seek the Lord for a spouse. And he literally set up a tent in his backyard, and he didn't sleep in his own bed. He slept in the tent, and every night for weeks, I'm not even sure exactly how long, he just went out and he prayed, and he prayed, and he prayed, and he prayed. God, would you show me your will? If you've called somebody for me, if you have a spouse for me, who it is, would you make it clear? And then one day, Sammy walked out of the tent, and he said, God told me I'm getting married. So then he went to the board of his organization, and he literally said, hey, guys, I'm going to need off in about 6 months because I'm getting married. And then he said, to who? And he goes, I don't know yet. God just told me I'm getting married. I mean, he had literally picked the date. God was going to provide the mate. And then, I kid you not, at the same time, his wife now was feeling a stirring, like I think God is preparing somebody for me. And they met shortly after that, and within 6 months, they were married. And that's questionable, isn't it? I know that some of you are like, I might need to go get a tent after this. This could be a plan. Trusting God is the plan. Yes, trust the Lord of the plan. but listen to him. So that's him. Questionable life. He lived it. Here's another one, a little broader, but I have a friend, Pastor Demelesh. He grew up in Ethiopia in a small village. He grew up a Muslim. And in his village, everybody were Muslims. And then these missionaries came to town, built a school, and they built a health clinic. But as soon as people realized they were Christians, they burned down the health clinic, they burned down the school, and they kicked them out of town. And the only people in that town that came to faith, that heard the message of Jesus and responded to it, were Pastor Demelesh, he was a kid at the time, and his family. And the reason that they responded was because they had heard stories of these people who had tried to bring this message about Jesus to them. And they were Swedish missionaries who were crossing the desert, literally walking across the desert, trying to get to their village years before, but they died on the journey. And so the story that he had heard is these missionaries were found on the ground in a praying position and dead in the middle of the desert. They'd gotten lost trying to get to them. So what his family said, if these missionaries had something so important to tell us that they were willing to die for it, then maybe we should listen to these other missionaries who got to our town. And now Pastor Demelesh is literally speaking the gospel, starting churches all over the U.S., and has this radio program bringing the gospel over borders into areas where it is illegal to follow Jesus, and every day people are coming to know him. Those missionaries went out into the desert thinking, we're going to make a massive impact in God's kingdom. We're going to this village and we're going to bring the good news. They didn't even get to the village. They didn't get to see the big picture. But believing God, even though they gave their life in the desert, now thousands upon thousands of people are bearing the fruit of that witness. That's questionable. That's questionable. But man, God is so good. So now, let's take a look at Hebrews chapter 11, verse 22, and this is Joseph. Hebrews 11, verse 22. By faith, Joseph, at the end of his life, made mention of the exodus of the Israelites and gave directions concerning his bones. Like, what? What is this? What is this saying? So I'm going to get to this, but I'm going to come around an even longer way before we get to this part. If you know the historical account of Joseph's life, and I'm going to unpack some of it, this is actually mind-boggling. Because some of the people in the faith history, like Jacob was a bit he was a bit dishonest, and yet by faith, we catch part of it, and it was such a powerful message last week. But then Joseph, I look at his life, and if I were to be the author of Hebrews, this is not what I have picked, what I would have picked. He had so many impactful moments. I would have pulled from so many of those and gone, by faith, this, and this, and I'm going to look at those, but not his bones. Then I'm going to come back around to that. So let's take a look at Joseph and what's going on with him. And if you've got your Bible, put a thumb in Hebrews 11, but go now to Genesis chapter 39. Turn to Genesis chapter 39. The story of the historical account of Joseph actually goes from Hebrews 37 till about 50. And I'm just going to pick some pieces out as we go through this. Joseph was the 11th son in his family. He had 10 older brothers, and Joseph was by far the favorite. So don't look to Jacob for parenting advice, because he was a terrible father. He literally was like, here are my 11 sons. Here's my son Joseph. He's my favorite. I mean, can you just imagine like holidays at their house? Like everybody's getting presents, but Joseph's is bigger and better. In fact, Joseph was literally given a coat of many colors from his father. So he's like, Joseph, you're my favorite. I'm going to give you this coat. Wear it everywhere so everybody knows you're my favorite son. So he's got 10 older brothers. And remember, this is a time when inheritance is supposed to go to the oldest in the family and then be broken down accordingly. Remember, Jacob, who's his father, is the one that stole the inheritance from his older brother. And so here's Joseph, the youngest. His 10 older brothers must have been like, oh, great. Here's the favorite, and he's going to take our inheritance with him. They had a wealthy patriarch father. They were jealous of him. And then as if this didn't make it worse, God gave Joseph dreams where essentially the interpretation of the dreams is that his family is going to bow down before him. And Joseph, he didn't keep that to himself. He's probably in his teens, and he's like, hey, guys, I had a dream last night. You're all going to bow down to me. God gave me that dream. Like, this didn't help the whole situation. So his brothers were jealous. Their brothers were seeing their own inheritance. They're seeing the love of their father go to this one son. And so the opportunity came up, and some of them wanted to murder him. Instead, other brothers talked the bigger group into throwing him into a pit, and then they sold him into slavery, but lied to the rest of the family and said, hey, Joseph, they took his coat of many colors, ripped it up. Can you just picture the anger and the frustration? Ripped it up, put blood on it, and then said to their father, look, your favorite son, he got killed. And it just ruined Jacob. You can just read through, like the grief in him was so heavy. And so Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, sent into slavery, and it gets sold to a guy named Potiphar. And here's the first point where I would go, man, I would consider this if I was writing Hebrews 11. Joseph gets rejected by his brothers, but by faith he did not despair. He did not, that thing about being rejected by his brothers did not define him. What did? Look at Genesis 39. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and then Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. And then look at this next line. And the Lord was with Joseph, so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian masters. And when his master saw that the Lord was with him, and the Lord gave him success in all he did. What defined Joseph was not this angry, upset, revenge-filled slave. Instead, he flourished where he was planted. And he what did Potiphar see in him? That the Lord was with him. What do they say about you? I mean, so many of us are like, my life would just be so much better if I was in a better situation. Let me tell you why things aren't going my way. And here are all the reasons. Let me list them off. And Joseph, he's gone from favored inheritance coming his way, son, to slave in Egypt. And he just serves the Lord where he's at. And I love that what it says then is that the Lord was with him. The Lord was with him. So then, in Potiphar's house, well, let me break it down this way. I do want to say this here. Sorry, I was thinking about reordering, but I'm not going to reorder. Chris told me to preach it as I preached it, so I'll preach it again. So many times in the Bible, it talks about, like, all these things are falling apart around us. Like, if you look through, if you be still and know that I am God, the context of that is like the world is shaking. And God's answer to us is not, it's okay, I'm going to fix it. His answer is simply, be still, I am God. Like, I'm with you. We see that in Job. All these things are happening, and Job just says, just know, I am God. Jesus in the New Testament, it's like, they're going to hate you. All these hard things are going to happen, but know this, I am with you. And so here's my question to you. I don't know what situation you're in. I don't know what brokenness are in relationships in your world. I don't know what struggles you have, but I guarantee many of us in this room woke up carrying a weight on our shoulders of the situation and world that we're in. And here is the question. Is it enough to know that the Lord is with you? And if your answer is, I'm not sure it is, then I want to challenge you to expand your view of who the Lord is. Is he enough for you, regardless of your situation? So then Joseph in this house, all he has is the Lord. He's actually flourishing, put in charge of all of the household for Potiphar. But then Potiphar's wife, it says about Joseph that he is a handsome man. Actually says that only about three men in the Bible, and Joseph is one of them. He's a handsome man, and Potiphar's wife desires him. So she tries to seduce him. And Joseph resists. Now, I know this weekend was a big purity weekend for both the guys and the girls, and I think there's some things to pull out of here about Joseph. So how did Joseph resist temptation? First off, he made a decision ahead of time for the situation he would be in. It's clear if you read through this that Joseph avoids Potiphar's wife at every turn. There will be he's trying to make so there's no opportunity for any failure to happen. Now, that's a lesson for us. Like, especially with sexual sin, the situations, the place, the setup that often causes you to fall into temptation. Make the decisions now so that the opportunity is not even there later. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this. That all fell apart when Joseph suddenly finds himself in the house alone with Potiphar's wife. So the situation, he was trying to control it, but it didn't play out the way that he had been working it. And then she tried to seduce him, and then this is what Joseph did. He ran. So first off, make the decision now for the situation you'll be in. And secondly, if you still find yourself in that situation, flee, run, get away with everything you've got. I've got one friend, he was talking about, man, his phone, he goes, if this phone one more time, I'm led into temptation with this phone, I will literally throw it away. And then I saw him a week later, and I said, how's that going? He goes, well, on Tuesday, I took my phone and I threw it into the lake. No joke. He said, I am going to flee temptation. And Joseph does that. And then while he's fleeing, Potiphar's wife is holding onto his robe, and he runs away. The robe stays behind, and he runs away naked. And then Potiphar's wife accuses him of doing the very thing that he had just fled from. So then he's thrown into prison. So from slave to leader of the house to prison. And again, Joseph does not despair. The brokenness of his situation does not define him. What defines him is the same as before. Look at Genesis 39, verse 21. But while Joseph was there in the prison, what's the next line? The Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. Once again, Joseph is blessed even in the hardest place, and he flourishes where he's planted, even though it's hard. He could have despaired. God, I've been trying to serve you, and now I go from being a slave to success, and now back to prison. But instead, he just serves the Lord where he's planted. And so he was probably in Potiphar's house for about 11 years. And then he's in prison. He's put in charge of all of the prison. And then the chief cupbearer and the chief chef from Pharaoh, something happened at a dinner party. We don't know what, but they got in trouble. They got thrown into prison together. And while they're there, they have dreams that Joseph interprets by God's strength, tells them this is what those dreams mean. And then Joseph just says, especially the cupbearer, as he goes back to Pharaoh, he says, hey, just remember me that I'm here and I haven't done anything wrong. Unfortunately, that cupbearer did not remember Joseph, and another 2 years passed while he's in prison. And Joseph just faithfully serves the Lord where he's at. After that time, Pharaoh has a couple dreams that disturb him, and nobody can interpret them. And that cupbearer, who's by Pharaoh, goes, oh, hey, I remember there's this guy in prison. He interpreted my dreams. Maybe he can help here. And he does. He hears Pharaoh's dreams, and he tells him these dreams mean there's going to be 7 years of plenty. The land is going to be producing so much, followed by 7 years of famine, where it's going to be so bad, nobody's going to remember the years of plenty. And Pharaoh hears that, knows it's a word from the Lord, and then this is Genesis 41, what Pharaoh says next. The plan seemed good. So actually Joseph says, so what we're going to do, what we're going to do is, what you should do is collect as much as you can during the 7 years of plenty, and then you'll have it during the 7 years of famine. And Pharaoh goes, that's wise. So Pharaoh asks them, can we find anyone like this man? And what again does he notice about Joseph? One in whom is the Spirit of God. Once again, the theme is Joseph is close to the Lord, and the Lord is with Joseph. And so Joseph gets put in charge of all of Egypt. Says, this is the plan. You're going to run it. Whatever you say. He goes, I'm Pharaoh, and then next in command is you. You speak as if you speak to me to everyone. Joseph just went from slave to second in command of all of Egypt. And Hebrews 11 does not say, by faith, Joseph went from slavery to ruler. It doesn't say that. It could, but it doesn't. And then, even more so, a couple years into the famine, Joseph's brothers, remember the ones that threw him into a pit, sold him into slavery, and never came looking for him, they come to Egypt because they need food. And they end up coming before Joseph, and they don't recognize him. Like this is the moment in every movie where the person who wants revenge is about to deliver it. Justice could be served. He's got all the power. Like, if you're familiar with the story of the Count of Monte Cristo, I know it's a little bit of an older movie, this is the moment where he's gone from slave to rich and wealthy, all the powers in his hand. He can exact his revenge. But Joseph doesn't hold anger or resentment in his heart for his brothers. This is amazing to me. I don't know about you, but I can hold anger and resent over things a lot lower than, they almost murdered me and sold me into slavery, right? I can harbor those things. Joseph doesn't at all. In fact, he completely forgives them, so much so that he has to tell them multiple times that he forgives them. Genesis 50 says this, but Joseph said to them, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? Listen to this next line. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So don't be afraid. He says, I will provide for you. By faith, Joseph forgave his brothers. And maybe some of us today, this is the point we need to hear, is by faith in God. You can't do it on your strength, but by trusting in him, maybe it's time for you to trust it to him and forgive. You've probably heard this quote, not forgiving is the poison you take, thinking it will kill someone else. And Joseph didn't harbor it. So then, after all of that, we don't hear in Hebrews 11 about forgiveness or about his slave to victory or about all those things. All we hear is about his bones. So what is up with Joseph's bones? Genesis 50, verse 24. He says this. This is the end of Joseph's life, and he says this, I'm about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, his fathers. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. What is he saying? He's saying, yeah, he saw God do all these mighty things in his life, but what is he putting his faith in? The faith in the promise that God gave to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that the people of Israel would one day be in the promised land. And this promise of promised land is not just the physical land, it's actually the redemption of all people that ultimately comes through Jesus. And what Joseph is saying is, we're here in Egypt, but I know that God will deliver on his promise because I believe God. And I might not be here in my lifetime, but in when that happens, take my bones with you. It was 400 years later before his bones went with him. What is Joseph saying? He's saying by faith, Joseph believed in God's bigger promise, bigger than he could see in his lifetime, bigger than he would see revealed in his life. And man, so many of us miss the bigger promises of God because we're really stuck on promises we think God gave us that he didn't. And most of those have to do with our comfort. Joseph lived a life of discomfort, but of trust in God. And at the end of his life, he said, God promised the land and this hope for us. Take my bones with you when he delivers on that. 400 years later, he does. And I don't have time to get into all the detail on this, but they have found a tomb in Egypt that is very likely the tomb of Joseph, where his bones were for those 400 years. And there's some unique things about that tomb, about how it was opened up that isn't typical of what a grave robber would do, how the bones are gone, how it's structured in a statue around it that goes, this is probably where Joseph was, his bones, for those 400 years. And then in Exodus verse 19, Moses took the bones of Joseph with him. So when they left, they took Joseph's bones, made that Joseph had made the sons of Israel solemnly swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you should carry up my bones with you from here. And then I don't have this passage on the screen, but then Joshua, it says, once they reached the promised land, Joshua buried his bones in the land of Shechem, which is the land that his father Jacob had specifically bought in the past. They delivered on that promise, and there he was laid. He trusted God's bigger plan. Now, I'm going to start drawing it to a close, but as I do that, I'm going to unapologetically over-metaphor you, all right? So rapid-fire metaphors coming your way, so be prepared. Here's the first one. All right, put up that Lego set. So anybody here into Legos? Anybody know somebody into Legos? All right. Yeah, if you might not have wanted to admit it because you still play with them in your dorm room, but on your left is the Sydney Opera House Lego set. This is a 989-piece set. It's pretty awesome. I had it in the past, and it's huge, takes a lot of time to build, and is an awesome, clever representation. Now, on the right are some of the instructions. Now, when you go to build this thing, you've seen the picture, and you're thinking, I know what we're building, the Sydney Opera House. But imagine if all you had was just the instructions on the right. Like, if you're looking at those, the instructions 9 through 16, you're like, what are we doing? Like, what is this? It's not even complicated, doesn't look hard. I don't see a bigger picture here. If all you had was what's on the right, and I think in life, in our limited view, like sometimes all we see are God's telling us to put this block here, put that block here, and this little thing is happening, but we don't get to see the bigger picture. Do you believe God and trust in His bigger picture, even if we don't get to see it all? All right, you with me on that metaphor? All right. Next one is I brought some forks with me, and they kept trying to take them off here because they're like, why are there forks? And I kept saying, leave the forks. So you might have heard this story before, but I don't think this is true, but I think it's a powerful story and maybe has come true because of it. But there's a story of a woman who, when she was about to die, she knew her day was coming. She went to the pastor as they were planning her funeral, and she said, hey, when they put me in the grave, I'd like you to put a fork in there with me. And you know, just like you might be thinking, like, why would she ask that? Like, put a fork in me, I'm done? That's not it. I said, why would you ask that? And she said to the pastor, well, when I was growing up, when we had a meal and there was going to be dessert, they would always tell us, keep your fork because the best is yet to come. So she said, hey, when I get buried and I know my day is coming, would you put a fork in there with me? Because I want that reminder for everyone that the best is yet to come. Her hope is not in this life that is, but in the life that will be. The hope and the promises of Jesus. And by the way, on these forks, because I've told this story before, somebody literally engraved, keep your fork, best is to come. They gave these to me. And these will probably be buried with me someday. The best is yet to come. And I think we have such a limited perspective that we miss the bigger promises of God, the eternal promises of God. Jesus, it says, if you keep going in Hebrews 11 to Hebrews 12, it says that He endured the cross, scorning its shame. Why? Because of the joy set before Him, because the best is yet to come. There's more to it. And then there was another man who was rejected by his brothers, who was unfairly accused, and for him, he was literally killed even though he was innocent. And I'm talking about Jesus, while Jesus had nails being pounded into his arms, he said, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. Just like Joseph, he said, forgive them. For the joy set before him, he endured all of that, took all of that rejection on our behalf because of the joy set before him. The best is yet to come. All right, one more metaphor. Go ahead and throw this up here. It's a big image. So this is from my Instagram page, but here's how this plays out. There are thousands upon thousands of colors that our eyes cannot see. I don't know if you've ever thought about that. This color spectrum goes infinitely higher and lower beyond what our field of vision can see. And so in our limited field of vision, we have color receptors in our eyes. Some creatures, like the dog and the hippo, they have 2 color receptors. And you can kind of see an example of what the rainbow would look like to them. It's very simple, kind of yellow to blue. Some of God's created creatures and humans have 3. So you got lions and cats and humans. Even some humans, some rare ones, have 4 color receptors to be able to capture all those variations of color. But then you've got the butterfly that has 5 color receptors. So when the butterfly looks at the rainbow, like we don't even know what to call those colors. We just call them ultraviolet, infrared. They're just beyond. But they're actual colors. Like just try and think of other colors. It's mind-boggling, isn't it? The depth. And then you get the mantis shrimp. And man, I could preach a whole message just using the mantis shrimp, but I won't today. But the mantis shrimp, it has 16 color receptors in those little eyes. When it sees a rainbow, it sees an explosion of colors beyond what you and I can even imagine. When I think about that, I think about a mantis shrimp can see so much more. God created that shrimp. God created so much more. God sees infinitely more than we can see. Can you trust him? Believe him, even though you can't see it all. Trust the Lord. And then I'm going to draw it all together with this. Jesus, some famous words at the end of Matthew. He says, go therefore and make disciples. And he tells them where to go, where to make disciples. In Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the ends of the earth. But you know, if you're reading through the New Testament, after Jesus rose and came back in the book of Acts, they don't actually go to Judea and Samaria and the ends of the earth. This is actually this beautiful time, Acts 2:42. They're gathered together, they're breaking meals. They're extremely comfortable, enjoying each other, worshiping God. I mean, it's awesome. But then something significant happens. Stephen is the first martyr of the early church. He's stoned, like literally killed for following Jesus. And Paul is there, literally holding the coats of the people stoning him and looking on with favor before his conversion. And after Stephen, and a season of persecution came on the followers of Jesus. And if you keep reading through the scriptures, this is what it says. And those followers of Jesus then scattered to Judea and Samaria and the ends of the earth. Like God literally used uncomfortable situation to achieve his greater purpose of showing the greater promise of there's more yet to come. That if our following of Jesus is not about our comfort, our calling for him is probably going to lead us to uncomfortable places. And I want to ask you, will you flourish where he plants you? Will you see that he is enough where you are? Will you live a questionable life? Will you trust him in all? And for the joy set before us, will you put your hope in Jesus now and forever? Amen? Amen.